In astrology, a square is an aspect where planets are about 90 degrees away from each other, and an opposition is an aspect that involves planets being about 180 degrees away from each other. An exact square is exactly 90 degrees, and an exact opposition is exactly 180 degrees. And it's notable that since astrology is not an exact science, astrologers often don't agree on how many degrees you can quote-unquote push this. Some would say it depends on the bodies involved. For example, that you can use a larger orb for the sun and the moon and a smaller orb for Pluto. There are no exact rules around this, so it's possible to explore it in slightly different ways. To put it very generally, I prefer to use an orb of 10 degrees for the major aspects, but it is not so black and white. Squares represent internal conflict and tension. There is some kind of friction present in the person which can push a person to take action. It represents obstacles, lessons, and struggles that require effort to overcome. Most naturally, the planets involved in a square with each other would be in the same modality and different elements. However, I also use quote-unquote out-of-sign aspects, which can add nuance and complexity. To illustrate this briefly, I have Mercury in Aries at 28 degrees and Saturn in Aquarius at 3 degrees. Aries and Aquarius are considered to be in a sextile relationship to each other by sign. However, when considering the exact degrees of my Mercury and Saturn, they can be said to be in a square relationship. There are astrologers out there that would dispute this, not considering it a square, or at least considering it a very weak or insignificant square, but through observing and being aware of my own experience, I would be inclined to consider it a square of mine, as it makes sense to me in the context of my life. However, I would agree with the notion that these out-of-sign aspects are perhaps more difficult to interpret or understand. Adding to that, the fact that my Mercury and Saturn are 5 degrees apart might justify interpreting it as slightly quote-unquote weaker than an exact aspect, although still very much relevant to my life and psyche. Square aspects in a birth chart can manifest in a way where the person often feels compelled to act, sometimes recklessly or with frustration, because they have not yet learned how to work through the inner conflict or work with the inner conflict productively. Squares can be major sources of tension in the person's life because it can feel like there is constantly a nagging, frictional energy being created that you are called to work with. Squares can force action to be taken through difficulty or hurdles. To use a somewhat simplistic analogy, you could think of a square aspect as a big rock in your path. You can't continually ignore it as it will come up and create challenges for you, so you have to find a way to climb over it. An opposition aspect can also create a lot of challenges. However, these aspects more so represent an external tension, as well as a need to find balance between two opposing forces or energies. It can often play out in relationships through specific kinds of conflicts with other people, rather than just internally. Unless we're dealing with an out-of-sign opposition, the two planets involved in an opposition are usually in opposite signs, for example Aries and Libra or Leo and Aquarius. Opposite signs have a shared modality but different ways of expressing energy. Aries and Libra are both cardinal signs, however Aries is about the self and Libra is about the other and partnerships. Leo is about taking pride in your own self-expression and perhaps becoming empowered through it, and Aquarius is more about the power and freedom of the collective, although it can also be expressed through individualism. With oppositions, there is often a sense of projection. You could be in a situation where one side of the opposition may be denied or externalized, which can make it necessary for integration of the two energies to occur. Oppositions have to do with push-pull dynamics, polarization, and projection, while squares have to do with internal struggle, challenge, and friction. Both of these aspects can push you towards growth, but squares feel more like a battle within, whereas oppositions often manifest in external situations with people, or like a tug of war with the world. Oppositions often show up in relationships or interactions where you feel torn between two extremes. The relationships you attract can reflect or highlight your own push-pull dynamics. To put it simply, squares represent inner conflict where the person feels tension inside and needs to take action to resolve it, and this can happen over and over again. And oppositions represent outer conflict where the person experiences tension through other people and needs to find balance. I will dive into specific aspects more on this channel, but for now, let me know what you think. How do some of the squares or oppositions in your chart show up in your life? If you found this video helpful or interesting, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for listening. Hope you tune in again.